Gentlemen, welcome to our channel. If you, like me, do not support adultery and believes that cheaters should be fully responsible for their actions, then like this video and do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Well, let's get started. Greetings to all. I never thought that I would come to this, to seek advice from strangers on the internet. And yet here I am. My wife and I went through a joint life path of 10 years, of which we spent 8 years in marriage. We crossed paths in college, becoming each other's first and only partners. I sincerely believed that our relationship was unique and wonderful because of our common history, but it seems that this perception was solely my own. Some time ago, my wife started working at a new company. At first, it was difficult for her to find her place because of her closed nature, but thanks to my support, she managed to make friends with a group of girls, some of whom were single. After a divorce or dating without marriage, I was initially glad that my wife had new friends, but I became more and more worried when she started going to drinks, parties, and other events that her friends were planning. I wanted to discuss this change in behavior with her, but at the same time, I didn't want to impose any restrictions. Unfortunately, this change began to affect our intimate life in the bedroom. My wife, who usually did not initiate intimacy, either felt too exhausted or simply was not in the mood due to constant walks. Eventually, a new manager appeared in her company, whom my wife and her friends seemed to accept wholeheartedly. Gradually, my wife began to casually mention the new manager, even to discuss how he solved some issues seemingly unrelated to work. I began to worry about her infatuation with this man, and I expressed my concerns. But she didn't hesitate to say nothing. To my surprise, she started discussing the idea of an open marriage to spice up our relationship. This came as a shock to me because my wife had never shown such inclinations before and, frankly, was not particularly personal. At first, I refused her offer and asked if it was related to the new manager. She denied any connection, but admitted that she felt she had missed out on a certain experience. Nevertheless, she assured me that she did not want to lose me and therefore considered an open marriage as a safer option. I warned her that she was playing with fire, but in the end, out of some naivety, I agreed to the idea of an open marriage. We established a number of rules, the main one of which was not to engage in intimate relationships with other people in our own home. For a year, my wife went on dates, had one-night stands, and eventually ended up in some kind of relationship with this manager. On the other hand, my experience was limited to a few dates, without any one-night stand. At some point, I felt that the love I once felt for her, those pure and uniquely innocent bonds of marriage, had disappeared, and it was tearing me apart from the inside. I found solace in the company of an amazing woman who recently moved from South Korea, and in the end, we went on an unforgettable date together. Our conversations flowed easily, and her wit and infectious smile left an unforgettable impression. We continued to go on dates, and soon an intimate relationship began between us. I've never experienced anything like the passion that was between my wife and me. This woman was incredibly giving, making me feel wanted in ways I could never have imagined. At first, my wife thought it was funny, but over time she began to doubt the depth of my relationship with my mistress. In response, I reminded her that this arrangement was her own suggestion. I also expressed my concerns about her own relationship with the manager. A heavy silence hung in the air as she absorbed my words. It looked like she had something on her mind, but she preferred to keep it to herself. Her behavior changed dramatically. She started coming home earlier to surprise me with dinner and carefully clean the house. She even came to my office to bring lunch and began intimacy in the bedroom. Under other circumstances, these gestures would have given me great joy. But in the conditions of our open marriage, the responsibility for agreeing to which lies with me, it was difficult for me to reciprocate her. When I did get intimate with her, it was just to get it over with. Something in me had changed in relation to my wife, and I felt that she felt it too. I plucked up the courage and asked her what had led to such a change in her. "What has changed?" I asked, desperately trying to find an explanation for her sudden change in behavior. In response, she said that she wanted to show me that she loves me and is genuinely happy in our relationship. I couldn't help but laugh, feeling the irony of the situation. I went on to tell her about her circle of friends, about the manager she talked to, about her many one-night stands. There was silence in the room, and that evening she went to bed in tears without answering anything. The next day, when I got home, I found her waiting. With a heavy heart, she confessed that she wanted to end an open marriage. She admitted that the whole experience was a terrible mistake and expressed deep regret about everything that happened. She begged us to focus our relationship on each other again. I asked her to be extremely honest with me and tell me about the true inspiration behind all this. To my surprise, she admitted that her friends had given her this idea. They told stories about their intimate adventures, which aroused her curiosity. When her manager stepped in, he surprisingly supported and encouraged this open lifestyle, pushing my wife to further progress along this path. What started as an emotional connection eventually led to a physical romance once our marriage became open. She described it as feeling drunk driving a high-speed car, a dangerous and reckless situation. At first, she was fascinated by this new way of life, but now the consequences have become unbearable. She realized that she didn't need a comparison. What was between us was truly unique and special. Regret flooded her heart when she realized the seriousness of what, in fact, ruined our marriage and extinguished any hope for a future together. In a moment of candor, I admitted that I might not be able to see her as my wife anymore. This confession shattered her, and she fell in front of me. Without saying a word, I just hugged her tightly while she cried, seeking solace in silence. Eventually, fatigue overcame her, and she fell asleep in my arms on the couch. In an effort to make amends, she took a bold step. She quit her job and severed all contacts with her friends and manager. She showed a sincere willingness to spend the rest of her life making amends to me and working tirelessly to regain my trust and become a real wife. But I still haven't broken off my relationship with my mistress. To be honest, my mistress allows me to feel like a man, gives me a sense of confidence and strength that I have not experienced in marriage for a long time. All this is compounded by the fact that in just a couple of hours, we have scheduled the first marriage consultation. I do not know how everything will turn out, but I hope for a positive result. At first glance, the therapist seemed pleasant and experienced to me, which gave me hope. The therapist seemed to me unbiased and sincerely willing to help us sort out our problems. Even though it was our first session, my wife took the opportunity to put everything on the table. She boldly admitted that the influence of her friends made her think about whether she missed any sensations. The fact that she was devoted to her first boyfriend and had no other romantic relationships made her wonder if she had missed out on the adventures that some of these seemingly amazing women had experienced. It is worth noting that although some of her friends were divorced, none of them were married. The therapist shrewdly noted that such a way of thinking can often be detrimental to marriage. A mismatch of experience and longing for what could have been can create significant tension in a relationship. My wife nodded in agreement, admitting that after the new manager started showing interest in her, some of these friends suggested that she consider this possibility. They saw it as an opportunity for her to explore and discover herself. Despite feeling guilty, she claimed that she had never entered into physical intimacy until one of her divorced friends suggested an open marriage as a kind of loophole. This friend convinced her that some couples really get stronger after such an experience. Unfortunately, my wife admitted that she persuaded me to an open marriage, which she now regrets very much. She called her so-called adventure intoxicating and all-consuming, but devoid of genuine content. He began to realize that the connection she had with her adventure was nothing compared to the foundation that we had been building for years. Doubts began to creep into her mind, making her doubt the motives that prompted her to embark on this path. She saw the pain reflected in my eyes, and it touched her to the quick. At first, she thought that since I was dating, I would eventually accept her situation and come to terms with it. But everything changed when my mistress became a constant presence in my life. I seemed to start smiling again, even for no apparent reason. My eyes lit up when I received a text message or cheerfully left the room to answer a call. These subtle changes in my behavior led to the fact that she realized how it affects our relationship. She admitted that she began to experience a strong sense of anxiety, accompanied by frequent panic attacks for no apparent reason. Once again, in search of advice, she turned to her friends, but they brushed off her concerns. saying that my reaction is a completely normal phenomenon during our adventure. But it was at that moment when the very friend who initially proposed an open marriage said that my mistress seemed to make me a happy person, the harsh reality became clear to her. The realization that it was not my wife who brought me joy, but another woman, almost led her to faint. The seriousness of the situation affected her greatly, highlighting the emotional blow inflicted on both of us. She realized the stupidity of what was happening and turned to her friends with a desperate request to help her get me back. But in response, they callously asked why she opened our marriage if she couldn't cope with the consequences. It was at that moment that she realized how toxic and dangerous these people were to our marriage and the life we had built together. As a result, she set to work tirelessly to regain my love and trust, ready to do whatever it takes. For my part, I didn't say much at the consultation, but I told that my mistress continues to communicate with me. The consultant admitted that as long as my mistress remains part of the equation, there is no solution to the problem. Therefore, they recommended to make an appointment for a consultation after tomorrow in order to once again analyze the complexity of our situation. The consultant noted the unusual approach to our long-term work as each other's first partners, which gave the impression that she was determined to help us overcome this turbulent period and become happy. I suspect she genuinely believed that any storm could be weathered with the right leadership and effort. Despite the fact that my report turned out to be voluminous, I wanted to give an exhaustive account of the current situation. In light of all that has happened, I have decided to move into an apartment owned by my brother. Although he offered it to me for free, I insisted on a ridiculously low rent as I wanted to maintain a sense of independence. As I delved deeper into finding out the truth about my wife's behavior and the disturbing moments associated with her manager, disturbing discoveries began to appear. During the second consultation, I decided to ask some questions. I asked if there was anything physical before the opening of our marriage. In response, she turned away, staring at the floor, and begged me not to force her to say the answer out loud. She reluctantly admitted that, although it was not physical intimacy in the traditional sense, they were engaged in giving each other pleasure in each other's presence. This manipulator convinced her that since it wasn't physical, it didn't count as cheating. He distorted the situation by saying that they just appreciated each other's beauty in its entirety. The weight of her confession hit me with overwhelming force. I was speechless and completely shocked. She began to tremble uncontrollably, barely catching her breath from the surging emotions. Tears streamed down her face, snot flowed from her nostrils. She apologized for her actions. Even the consultant, stunned by such a revelation, feigned disbelief. My wife fell to her knees and hugged my legs tightly, expressing her deep remorse. At that moment, she sincerely regretted the pain caused to her. Curiosity made me delve deeper into what caused her to change her attitude towards the manager. She told about one case when she began to move away from the collective as a whole. It was at this time that she noticed a change in his behavior towards her. One evening, leaving a meeting, she happened to pass by his office and heard him talking about her with another male colleague. To her horror, he expressed surprise at how easily he manages to manipulate her, noting that she is living proof that even the quiet ones cannot be trusted. When asked if he had sincere feelings for her, he replied that she was a pleasant but insignificant hindrance. This revelation further destroyed her idea of him. To make matters worse, the manager said that he was not going to break off the engagement with his fiancée. He heartlessly stated that his relationship with my wife is just a way to satisfy a temporary desire, emphasizing that he has a real connection and understanding only with the bride. He expressed a note of sympathy for me, but said dispassionately, "Overslept, lost." The realization that for this man she was nothing more than an object of conquest dealt my wife a crushing blow. Coupled with the guilt of betraying me for a fleeting pleasure, she was desperate. Overcome by a sense of hopelessness, she left her workplace, finding solace in the parking lot, where she vomited, physically showing emotional shock inside her. In addition, with tears in her eyes, she said that at first her thoughts were consumed with remorse. She doubted what she had done and asked me for forgiveness. She repeatedly apologized, expressing deep regret for the pain she caused. Curiosity made me wonder if she had a feeling of love for the manager, and when her love for me stopped. Through tears in her eyes, she met my gaze and resolutely declared that she had never stopped loving me. Strangely, this revelation intensified the pain, as it showed that, despite her love for me, she was drawn to something else. Now she understands how stupid it was to take it for love. At the moment of realizing this, she unexpectedly squeezed my hand hard, which further emphasized her sincere regret and the depth of her emotions. She admitted her mistakes and longingly remembered the connection that had been between us before everything happened. Trying to reconcile, she even offered to move and start life anew, together, as it was originally intended. But I was torn, realizing that continuing a relationship with my mistress would be unfair to her. I explained that I needed time to be with my wife separately to sort out the complexity of our situation. Hearing these words, she experienced a severe emotional breakdown. Her sobs intensified. She began to utter incoherent phrases, desperately clinging to me as if afraid that I would disappear. It took me and the consultant some time to calm her down and restore a sense of stability to the conversation. When we got home, I started packing my things, intending to create some distance and clarity, but then a video call came to my wife's laptop, which abruptly disrupted our plans. It was one of her former friends, visibly upset and tearful. Shockingly, it turned out that after my wife quit her job, this friend had an affair with the manager. In addition, she experienced pregnancy, which forced the manager to change his behavior dramatically. This revelation showed how much his character had changed. Even more disappointing was the fact that this friend had a boyfriend with whom she saw a potential future. Curiosity seemed to be a constant topic, and she admitted that her affair was caused by a desire to get new impressions. It was a depressing insight that echoed the patterns we encountered throughout this turbulent journey. It turned out that her friend's boyfriend came across an email correspondence between her and the manager in which a possible pregnancy was discussed. In shock, instead of taking responsibility, the manager accused her of trying to trap him with a child. As a result, her boyfriend ended their relationship. In search of comfort and advice, she turned to my wife, believing that she had managed to save our marriage. But I could no longer accept this situation, so I turned around and left, finding refuge in the apartment where I have been living ever since. Important events soon took place. It turned out that the ex-girlfriend who survived the fear of pregnancy was indeed pregnant. Unfortunately, the stress caused by the loss of a boyfriend and humiliation due to infidelity led to the fact that she lost a child. This bereavement caused her a violent reaction. She became enraged and exposed the manager to the top management and his fiancé. Out of curiosity, I accidentally found his fiancé on Facebook and decided to take a look. When I found the manager's fiancé on Facebook, I saw that she represented the image of an ideal girl from a small town. In her profile, she was presented as a teacher for children with special needs, who values the home and puts the family at the forefront. Suddenly, an ex-girlfriend who had experienced the fear of pregnancy contacted me. She said she intended to gather evidence against the manager and would like to hear my version of events in person. We both passed COVID tests to guarantee our safety, and when I saw the pain written on her face, I instinctively realized that she was also deeply wounded and broken. Obvious signs of fatigue, dark circles under her eyes, and a red tinge of her eyes indicated that she was tormented by sleepless nights and haunted by her own thoughts. Despite her fatigue, she expressed gratitude for agreeing to meet and immediately offered sincere apologies for her participation in my wife's ill-fated adventure. It turned out that she was talking to my wife again, as a result of which she found out about my decision to move out. Instead of shifting the blame to others, she took responsibility for her actions. So she insisted on a face-to-face meeting, appreciating her willingness to take such measures. I couldn't help but wonder why she was so determined. In response, she said that the loss of her child and the love of her life had led to profound changes in the very depths of her soul. This transformational experience has shaped her newfound sense of purpose. She admitted that she hardly looks at herself in the mirror. She's filled with disgust and self-pity. She couldn't sleep. She was haunted by the image of her ex's face on the day he found out the truth. It became obvious that this meeting was to some extent self-punishment for what he had done. She explained that communicating with colleagues was a clear violation of the rules of conduct, which was aggravated by his influential position in the company. As a result, there was a high probability that he would be fired and possibly blacklisted by the entire industry. At the same time, she understood that the same consequences could come for her. Despite this grim reality, she has come to terms with it, accepting the possible consequences that await her. After listening to my point of view on what happened, she thanked me again for sharing my story with her and apologized. With a heavy heart, she left, carrying with her a load of remorse. While trying to pick up some things from our former home, I chose a time when I assumed my wife would not be present. But to my surprise, she was there, surrounded by our wedding photos and others, seemingly immersed in a contemplative state. As soon as she noticed my presence, tears flowed down her face. She tried to hug me, but I gently pushed her aside, indicating that I needed to focus on getting my things back. The next gesture, she offered me lunch, but I refused, saying that I was not hungry and intended to do it quickly. Before I could continue, she said she wanted to show me something important. She took out her phone and saw a message she had received 2 days earlier from her former supervisor, which contained rude and furious words. Obviously, he used the new number to contact her since she blocked his previous number. My wife explained that she played a role in helping her ex-girlfriend expose him to the relevant parties, inspired by resources like Chump Lady and Marriage Builders. She believed that by revealing the secret, she deprives her of strength and gives our relationship a chance to fight. Although I expressed my gratitude to her for the courage shown in such actions, I said that it would not change anything in our relationship. I also mentioned my decision to stop marriage counseling at this stage. I told her that I would seek individual counseling instead, to which she sobbed softly and expressed her understanding. Although one would have expected me to feel a sense of delight at her action or rage because of the prolonged turmoil, I, on the contrary, felt numb towards her. Realizing that such an emotional reaction is not normal, I decided to deal with it within the framework of individual, not marital counseling. In order to ensure my own well-being and protect my interests, I followed my brother's recommendation and consulted with a divorce lawyer. At the moment, I am no longer ready to fight for the preservation of our marriage, and it seems that my wife feels this change in my position. Before I left, she made an attempt to start intimacy. When I rejected her attempt to initiate intimacy, she burst into anger, shouted, and asked questions about what exactly my mistress could provide, and she could not. In a voice loud enough for the neighbors to hear, she said that she was ready to satisfy any desire or need of mine as a wife. I shook my head, deeply saddened by the fact that even after all that had happened, she still could not realize the true consequences of her choice. With a heavy heart, I calmly explained that if she still could not understand the consequences of her actions, then it was obvious that our marriage was going downhill. I left feeling the full weight of the situation pressing down on me. It became increasingly clear that my wife was beginning to understand the harsh reality and consequences of her decisions. Unfortunately, the sad truth is that we cannot turn back time and correct the mistakes we have made. Perhaps she can devote some effort to introspection and personal growth, striving to become a better partner. But it is unlikely that this change will happen in the context of our relations, because the damage done is already irreparable. What you can be sure of is that she will forever retain the memory of me and will feel deep regret for her actions. This feeling of remorse surpasses what many of us get from those who have betrayed our trust. Voicing my pain has played an invaluable role in helping me maintain clarity and perspective throughout this heartbreaking process. Infidelity really deals a crushing blow that leaves indelible scars. I sincerely feel that I will come out of this better and stronger than I was before. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Put likes and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.